I think we're live.
We
Hello,
are live.
podcast world.
Howdy, y'all.
Hello.
Welcome to.
Hello.
We're live. We're up.
Okay. Score.
There we go. All right, everyone. Welcome to podcast Roundtable number 2 on Imposter Syndrome. Something most of us, I think, suffer from. And a proven way to deal with imposter syndrome is by talking about it, which is what we're going to do. You can watch us talk about it. We got a little group chat to the right that we encourage you to participate in. I'll be checking the chat so the panelists can focus on each other and answering the questions. My name is Chad Ellis. I'm your moderator for today, and I'm going to introduce our panelists. First, we have Jeff Van Dreason, the co-writer and producer of Greater Boston. Jeff uses he, him pronouns. Say hi, Jeff.
Hello, everybody. You can call me Beth, too. I don't mind.
And Beth, or Beth. And we have Rashika Rao here, who's currently working on an audio drama, writing the audio drama that has not been revealed yet. Rashika uses she, her pronouns. Say hi, Rashika.
Hey.
We have JV Hampton-VanSant, creator of the audio drama Red Wing, also the host of the interview podcast In the Mix, and the true crime podcast Criminal Musings. They use they, them pronouns. You can also hear their work in shows like 1994.
Yes, hello, everybody. Hello.
And we have Bridge Geene, the editor for Tides, and Arden, who uses she, her pronouns.
Hello.
And maybe also Bridge's cat, McLeod.
He's eating right now.
Who uses he, him pronouns. I'm going to go over our general standards for discussion. I'm going to define imposter syndrome, and then we're going to jump into it. So, standard number 1, own your experience. Your experiences are your own. Try to use I statements and don't deny others' experiences. Number 2, positive examples are great, but do not name shame. You can bring up other podcasts, but if you're going to talk about problems areas, don't name people or shows. Number 3, give everybody equal time to speak, but also don't suppress yourself from speaking. I'm going to help with that. I'll make sure the time's being distributed evenly. I have a feeling with this, it's going to be more of with this crowd, it's going to be more don't suppress your own voice. 4, active listening. If you have a thought, try to scribble it down, take a breath, and then focus on the discussion. Again, you'll be able to bring up your thought afterwards. And 5, defer to the moderator when it comes to changing course. In this one, we're going to play it a little more loose, go discussion focused. We're going to try to get most of the main points done within the hour, since Jeff has to leave at the end of that, and then the rest of us will discuss. So, R-rated language is allowed as well. So, one definition of imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their accomplishments and has a persistent, internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. It often includes thoughts like, I must not fail, I feel like a fake, I just got lucky. So to start the panel, did anyone experience imposter syndrome in getting invited to this panel or participating in this panel? Rashika, talk on that.
I guess from the start, since everyone here is very amazing, and it's all, everyone here has work that I have consumed in some form or the other, so it's kind of like a meet your heroes thing. So being here when I don't actually have any content that is out, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome there where it's like, is it ever going to get out? And if it does, is it like, does it count as sort of a thing? Does that make sense?
Makes so much sense. Jeff, how about you?
Yeah, I pretty much have imposter syndrome 24/7 every single day, no matter what I'm doing. It's just a part of my life continually, which I'm not happy about. I try to combat all the time. This particular example, even though I've been working on Greater Boston for about 3 years, I still feel like a bit of an outsider when it comes to creating content like this and being considered a content creator. I don't know if I'm ever going to completely shake it, but I'm working on it, and that's why I was interested in doing this. I'm also not I have insane anxiety in general, and so I'm not like used to public speaking, even though I'm a teacher, which you would think I would be. But in this context with like screens, that's especially intimidating for me. I don't know why. So that adds another level of anxiety and another level of imposter syndrome for me. It just feels like I don't belong in this space, but I'm doing it to try to fight it.
Yes. Bridge, how about you?
I'm sort of in Jeff's boat. I always have imposter syndrome. When I was even first invited to the stop. This is Mac. He wanted to get a word in as well. When I was invited to the Slack by Julia, I was like, I'm not a real podcaster, and Julia's like, shut up, you do tides, you're a podcaster. And I was like, well, I guess so.
And then, yeah, totally. And JV?
I think was it 2 days ago? It was like 2 days ago. It didn't have time to set in. I mean, I suppose there was some moments yesterday where I had the distinct thought that I was going to say something incredibly stupid, and honestly, I still might. And I'm just gonna be fine with the fact that I'm going to inevitably say something probably stupid. It's cool.
It's the beauty of live panels. And we do have 6 viewers, though. I'm hoping, could somebody, if you're watching this, if you type something in chat, I don't know if this is just our panelist chat that I'm seeing or if this is the actual public chat.
I think it's just the panelists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll figure that out while we talk about the next thing. So I wanted to open this since something Rashika mentioned. I think a lot of us going into this had a sense of imposter syndrome. What's your first distinct experience with that that really stands out to you that might help somebody who's thinking of getting into podcasting or getting into podcasting or creating a podcast? What's something you went through that they're probably going through right now?
I feel like so the podcast community overall is very welcoming, which is really fortunate. But it also at times when you're first getting into it can seem like, oh, everybody already knows each other. Where do I fit in? And so at least for me, a part of that was at first being afraid to reach out to other people who seemed like, compared to me, almost like famous. But I guess just overcoming that fear of reaching out, because as long as you do it in a polite manner, like no one's gonna, shut you out. Because as I said, it's a very welcoming place. And I think it was important for me to learn that. I want to say like Eli Barraza in particular has been like super welcoming to me. And talking to her helped get over that initial fear of talking to people. Is my mic on?
Your mic is on.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because
waiting
I've
for the
been
next
running
person.
out.
I could just call on the next person.
Oh, okay. Well,
David.
I wanted to agree. I entirely agree because that is it's the same feeling that I had as soon as I started. Quick question. There's a bit of question. I'm like hearing myself every like.
I'm getting
2 seconds.
feedback. Do you have? I'm getting
Oh. Okay. Cool. Got it. Found it.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So I had that feeling as soon as I put out the first episode of Red Wing. A lot of this for me happens like immediately after I do something. So I'm like, okay, cool. I've decided I'm gonna start this. Great. It's happening. What did I do? Why? Oh no. And sort of a little cycle of slight regret and questioning of things at that point. But that, reaching out to people was for sure a thing that in the very beginning of podcasting for me, I was totally just not sure exactly how I was going to do that, which is obviously an issue if your initial podcast is an interview podcast wherein you have to reach out to people to be able to talk to them. So it was just sort of one where I just started reaching out to the indie shows that I knew were definitely indie shows very, very early, where like there were at most 3 people involved in the creation of the show, and I probably heard all of their voices on the actual thing. And I would reach out to them for an interview, and then after like 1 or 2 of those, then I had people actually like reaching out to me. Shout out to Wine and Crime for doing that exact thing. And it just sort of spiraled from there and became easier with doing it over and over and over again.
So it did get easier with time as you went.
Yeah, for sure.
Jeff.
I think that when I started having a hand in the show's social media, I started feeling like I was an imposter. And in the early days, we didn't have connections to as many audio dramas as we do now, obviously. We had a hard to work at first. There were a lot out there, but we didn't know where they were, where to find them. And once we started finding them, I started listening to a lot of the shows, and just like everybody else, I was kind of blown away by the amount of talent out there, and I was very intimidated about that talent, and then interacting with those people. And then it became a thing to, the Audio Drama Sunday hashtag was created shortly after we first started. And, people were kind of shouting out our show, and we were shouting out other people's shows. And it just felt like, I was like, we don't belong in this space. Like you're like promoting us. Like, that's not right. Like, we'll promote you. And similar to Bridge too, like there's an audio drama creator Slack, and he invited me to it. I went there. People were there. People were talking who I was, a fan of. And immediately I was like, I can't talk to these people. I'm too intimidated. They're too good, and I don't belong here. So it happened right away, and it's lessened to a certain extent, just like JV said, just because of practice, just because of continuing kind of moving through it. But it's always kind of there in the back of my mind. It's never completely gone.
Mm-hmm. Bridge?
I know that I still have, especially now that Arden is getting so much attention after, I'm like, there's no way I'm really working for a show that's popular. I can't, because I don't have that much actual practical editing skills. So I'm like, there's no way people like my editing that much. It's got to be just the actors or the writing, and not at all anything I do for it.
Yeah, even though your show is like in the top 17 of performing arts iTunes right now.
And with good reason. I love it so very much.
There's just always a constant tiny screaming voice in the back of my head. It's a mixture of anxiety and imposter syndrome.
Yeah, totally. And this is something that the creator of the Athurin podcast in the chat mentioned, is how we all know each other. And I think this is something Rashika talked about too. A few people have talked about, because sometimes with these things, it feels like we all know each other. We all hang out all the time. Like, we're referring to each other by name here. We're fairly familiar. And for this particular group, I would say I'm more familiar than I have been in the past. But like, Jeff and I haven't really spoken before. We've circled each other around. We've got somebody's got speakers. Oh, there we go. Like how I said, nothing would go wrong with that, and something did. I've interacted with a few of you on this space. Like Rashika and I have mostly just talked in putting this together, but it's not like we all go way back or we started together at all. I think mostly we found each other through Twitter, through that promoting each other. and being excited that other people are making podcasts. But the people I'm seeing in the chat, I have the same relationship with a lot of them as I do with you. If anybody wants to speak to that. And just the general perception that people have of, oh, do all these podcasters know each other? How do they know each other? That sort of thing. And could I possibly break into that? How would I be among this group?
Yeah, when I first started, oh my God, 2 years ago, I knew absolutely nobody. I think the first podcaster that I really got to know was James Oliva. And if you know James, you know that once you meet him, you don't really have a choice of not getting to know him. And then through James, I got connected with pretty much everyone else. So it's really just finding the people you click with. And then through that, you just kind of expand and get to know more and more people.
Totally. Completely agree. I find that I think I don't remember who the first people were that I started to interact with, specifically in the audio drama community. There's actual record of who I interacted with first in the in terms of podcasting in general. Granted, I don't have these things memorized off the top of my head because, well, I don't. But I know that was it was I don't know why it happened, and I don't know how it happened. It just sort of did. And then that, slowly but surely began to branch out into other people. And then it happened very suddenly. It was slow at first and then became almost immediate right around I want to say February, around February of this year, started to interact with more people, which may or may not have been when I was invited to the Slack group and just said hello to people, or said hello in general to a random number of people that I didn't even know who all exactly was in the group. But yeah.
And I will shout out Will Williams' Podcast Problems Discord. Is a really good space if you're looking to start interacting with people. It has both fans, it has creators, it has actors. It's a good mix of people, and it's created by someone who doesn't make an audio drama, at least yet, Will. Though they have the Tuned In Dialed Up podcast. And those are good ways to start interacting if you're looking to break into this, if breaking in is even a thing. And then one more sub point to attach to this. So if you're a new podcaster, how do you go about deciding who you reach out to? That was something JV mentioned earlier. Who do you talk to? Because I do get that sense quite often of oh, this person's famous. I remember I had this interesting interaction with the people at Yarn Saxa Rising, where I listened to their show a year ago. And then I tweeted about them, and they were like, oh, we're so honored to be tweeted by Station Blue. I was like, what are you talking about? I listened to you back when I was in the writing stages. So I feel like we all have we see the accomplishments of these other people, and we're like, wow, they're so cool. And meanwhile, they're probably looking back being like, it seems to be all appearance-based. So how do you decide? Because everyone I've talked to is very, very accessible in person through PodCon, Los Angeles interactions, whatnot. Actually, I'll call on Rashika, because Rashika hasn't spoken in a little bit.
I want to say definitely creators whose shows I admire, I will reach out and be like, I admire your show. And sometimes conversation will develop from there. I would say Twitter is my main platform. Everyone seems to be on Twitter, and it's a lot easier to just be like, hey, I like your thing. Thank you for making it. And then it's easier to get that back and forth on Twitter versus other platforms, which can feel a little more impersonal. As far as deciding who to reach out to. Sometimes you just get caught up in a thread and then you'll get. I never really thought about it before like that. Yeah. I'm
Just
sorry that I don't have
naturally.
more to offer. Yeah.
That's plenty. You've got plenty to offer. Especially, I mean, I'm really excited that you're on this panel, just because you're in a position that I was in 8 months ago. And so that's, I think, the experience I relate to the most. Branching out to the others, JV, your mic is unmuted.
Oh, yes. Yes, it is. Twitter is a magical place. Twitter is a very magical place. And I find that anyone that I've attempted to reach out to on Twitter has responded, with the exception of people who have a blue check mark, which, well, sure, that makes sense to me a bit. Usually because that is a good indicator as to whether or not they're getting a lot of interactions with people all the time. If they're getting so many interactions with people to the point where they actually just can't respond to everybody, then I will usually just not actually reach out to that person, because I'm assuming that because I will assume that they are busy. And I might still tweet out and say, good job, great work, yes, awesome. I'll still probably do that, but I will not expect a response back. But if I get one, I might consider attempting to start a conversation, or not necessarily, depending on how I feel upon reading the response. Yeah.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff?
I ask Alexander to do it, to be honest, because I hate doing it so much. There was a time when we needed someone to guest star, and we were talking about who we wanted, and I kind of really wanted to ask Beth Eyre. I'm such a Wooden Overcoats fan. I'm such a fan of her. And I was like, she'd be perfect, but she would never do it. And Alexander, being Alexander, he just said, I'll ask her. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I got really nervous about, and the answer, he said, yeah, she said, fine. That sounds good. So I think I've gotten better at asking folks, because the community is so nice and welcoming and accessible. And so I have kind of, gotten out of my shell and asked people more often, but it's terrifying to me still, because I just assume people are gonna be like, I don't have time for this. He is much better at it. So usually if it's somebody that I'm especially anxious about, I just ask him to ask. I have a buddy. That's my cheating answer.
I think that works, and that's a good one. And I'm also enjoying this perspective, because most of us, we've put out our shows in the last year, whereas you're the veteran here, and Greater Boston is such a great show, which is evidenced by Bridges wearing a Greater Boston shirt. But I think being in Los Angeles, I've seen people at every stage of production have imposter syndrome. So it's great to get all these different elements. Bridge.
Well, before I was a part of Tides, I had a nonfiction show called Miss Weekly, which you can't find on iTunes anymore because I don't know. It's just not there anymore, and it makes me sad. And it was originally just a show where I was alone talking about stuff that I liked. And then, who was the first interview I did? Was it? I don't remember. I got the idea that maybe I'd interview podcast creators. And that was interesting, because I was like, well, no one's going to want to talk to... You know what? I think it was James. It was probably James, who was the first person I interviewed. And I was like, he won't want to talk for more than like 30 minutes. And then we talked for 3 hours. And then I was like, well, James is the only other person I really know, but I kind of know Jeff and Alexander, so maybe I'll ask them. And then I just went down the list of people that I kind of knew. And then when I ran out of people I kind of knew, the podcast kind of lost steam because I didn't know how to ask other people.
And that ties in beautifully to the next section. How has imposter syndrome affected your work? Whether preventing you from doing something, making something more difficult, even if you publish something or you're not. And I'd love to get all elements of this. And actually, Bridge, if you want to start us off on that.
So definitely, I think when I first started editing Tides, and I was like, I'll just do this for, especially the trailer, which was the first bit I edited. I was like, I'd kind of like to edit this show. And then I went on and I edited the show. And then the show got more and more popular. And I was like, oh no. Oh no, I have expectations that I have to live up to now. And I'm never going to reach them. Like, my show's never going to have as in-depth sound design as Joseph, or as in-depth sound design as What's the Frequency. And I was just like, oh, what's the point? And then I'd put off editing for like ever until it's the week before. And I'm like, shit, I have to do all this sound design in a week. And then I lock myself in my room and cry while replaying the same 7 seconds of audio trying to get it perfect.
Did working with others, because you're working with Ayla and Jesse, did that help or make it harder?
It helped, because if it weren't for them, if I were just making Tides on my own, it never would have got done, because I would have made the first few episodes, and then after people started like, the sound design's really good, I'd be like, oh crap. And then I'd just get so nervous and never do anything. But Ayla doesn't let you not do anything, so.
Good producer. Jeff, you've been in this game for a while now.
Yeah, I guess I still, it still definitely gets to me, but I think other aspects of my general anxiety take over when I'm making the show, and it's more about worrying about getting it done. Well, for one thing, when I'm writing, I don't feel so much like an imposter, because it's just really between me and the words, and Alexander, who I've known for forever, and I don't really get concerned about that. Making the show, it's usually just such a push to get it done that I'm not thinking about, do I belong here doing this, making this. Once it's released is definitely when I start thinking, oh my God, like, I'm listening to all these other shows and I'm thinking like, this doesn't, and it's always it's so narcissistic on one level. I don't like it to think that it is, but it's always my stuff. It's always like my writing and my production that I'm always worried about people, like, not thinking that it's up to snuff. And that's still something I wrestle with. I've tried, I've gotten better about it, but it's just part of my personality, and it's just something I kind of have to live with, I think. So it's really just the perception of it at this point that makes me feel like a bit like an imposter. It's the same thing with my regular job. I'm in a position now in my work where I don't feel like I should be. And my wife is the same way. She's at this level where she thinks that any day, she says this all the time, any day now they're going to find me out, and it's like, nobody's really thinking that way, but it's the way these insecurities manifest, I think, in people who have anxiety like we do.
Thank you. I'm just going to keep going down the line. JV, how has imposter syndrome affected your work, whether doing something, not doing something, however, how you've responded afterwards, like Jeff talked about?
So, oh man. So for In the Mix, back when that was my show, long story there, but that's fine. Back when In the Mix was still happening, the thing that got to me the most was when actually I was looking at I was looking at people that I had reached out to and hadn't like been able to schedule something with, but had really wanted to. And then like hearing them somewhere or seeing them somewhere, like on another thing that popped up in my feed, and I'm like, oh, they realized, didn't they? They listened and they didn't like the quality of this, and that's why they didn't focus on scheduling this. Like just something like that, and just a lot of that, which has been an ongoing struggle, just sort of with that show in general. It is, which I think also plays a role in that show being out of the three that I do, the one that is the most important in terms of like personal enjoyment, like because I like Chad, I've had you on that show, and like that was a great example of like I thoroughly enjoy those conversations. They go so many directions and are completely insane, and I love that so very much. And yet it also then becomes the least important because I'm like, are people going to listen? I don't know. I haven't looked at these numbers in forever because every time I do, it makes me a little bit depressed. So not going to look at it. I'll still put things out on occasion, but probably not that often. And it got to a point where it was like almost never. And so that show is slightly no more. Slightly. Has taken a different form, but whatever. It's fine. As far as the other one, as far as Red Wing goes, that has been actually, that one hasn't been as bad, I think, because for the first season I was working mainly with people who are my friends, who are my IRL friends. There we go. Those are words. My real life friends who were just super hype about it all the time, and like would not stop telling me how hyped they were about the fact that it was coming out. That really helped. And then that sort of continued. But as soon as like I do recall, like after pushing like publish on that first episode, thinking, oh, I really hope like none of my heroes specifically hear this. That's the thing that I don't want them to hear this. And then there's been a weird little thing of after that first episode thinking, I hope that especially after people tweet me and say, hey, just listen to the first episode, really liked it. After people say that, I get a little nervous because the first episode is I like the first episode. I like the way that one turned out. I mean, I like how all of it turned out. Otherwise, I would have retracted it by now and have run away screaming into the distance. But but like, just given the nature of story and how things go in different directions, that was just the beginning of the story. And the beginning of the story is a fairly good beginning of a story. But where it goes, I'm never sure if people are going to fully enjoy where it winds up. And I realized sort of there's a long journey here. I don't know if everyone's gonna follow me, and that worries me a little bit. I don't know if that's gonna play out the exact way that I want it to play out. But so far that's been mostly okay, I think.
Yeah, and I'm putting a pin. I wrote that down because once we cross the hour mark and Jeff has to leave, there's a few things you said that I'd love to dig in deeper, especially since you have both kind of a nonfiction interview podcast and Bridge has experience with that as well as an audio drama. Rashika, tailoring this to you, because you're in the height of that point where you're like, or at least for me, when I was in that stage, once again, 8 months ago, I was like, I could disappear and nobody would ever know except for this one person. I could vanish. I could run away. I had that for my first 4 episodes. How has this affected? Because that is difficult when it's both nice because nobody's looking at you, but it's also that pressure and the anxiety of like actually turning this into a thing. What has that experience been like for you?
So first of all, I have major nerves right now after listening to the rest of you guys all tell us all about that. So I guess we can start with that. As far as how it's affecting me and my work, at the moment, I would say there's kind of two separate paths this is going down. The first is with the audio drama that I'm currently writing by myself completely. That is just mine. And like you said, there's that whole, if it doesn't get out there, like no one's looking at me, but what if no one ever does? So it's almost a fear of disappointing people, like working this hard and creating a thing, but then the audience doesn't want it, or that it wasn't good enough. And so a fear of failing before you even start has in that direction. The other area is I am currently in the process of applying for a writing position on an audio drama that I very much love. And along with that comes a lot of emailing back and forth with the creator/writer. And there is right now a draft sitting in my inbox that I've been writing for the past 3 days and then erasing and then writing and then erasing because I have to get this right. There's another fear of what if I'm not the person that they think I am? What if I'm not the person like that is good enough? Because I'm at the moment nobody, relatively, and in my mind the show is this big somebody. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics with that. But this panel is motivating me to finish that email. I will send it today. Now that everybody watching this knows that it has to be sent. Mm-hmm. And there's also some spec script writing involved with this application process in which I'm writing for these characters that are somebody else's. And so there's a little bit of fear of I have to do these characters justice to the original, and another fear of I have to, give me a second to phrase this, a fear of almost messing up somehow, or I guess the closest, I don't have the words for this at the moment, but it's playing in somebody else's world and then tearing it down by accident.
Yeah, totally. I did some voice work for Greater Boston, and the whole time James was outside of the booth going, "Hey, man, I've seen you do this for your own show. It's fine." I was like, "No, it's Greater Boston." There's all this talent that I acknowledge. Yeah,
you did an excellent job. So, and thank you. I think everybody's been on the show except Rashika at this point. So we have to get Rashika on too, if that's okay. Just to round out the panel.
That was a fun time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you're dealing with that with going. So you have multiple issues because you're now getting involved in another show, so it goes beyond just your own personal project. That you can't do wrong because it's your own voice. Whether or not other people accept that is another anxiety.
Exactly.
Fantastic. I now getting into how, and I want to start with Jeff on this so that you'll be free to leave after this if you want. What have been effective ways for you to combat or get around or work with imposter syndrome? If any, you don't need any, but what have been some things that you have found useful? I think Jeff got frozen. Oh, the timing. All right. Let me throw that at, oh, wait, I'm seeing twitching.
Sorry, everything just froze up for a moment there, of course. I didn't hear the end of the question, Chad. I apologize.
Yeah, so the question, what have been some ways that have been useful for you for getting around imposter syndrome, or things you'd recommend for others, if you have any?
Well, one thing I've been thinking of as we've been talking is that I'm afraid that we're talking about the fear and the anxiety and the imposter syndrome so much that we might come across as discouraging. Like even when Rashika was talking about being nervous about publishing, I think that there's another side of it, and there's another side that's the excitement that comes with it. It's thrilling when you publish for one thing, and when you see any kind of interaction, or when you get the sense that anybody is listening at all. Before we started Greater Boston, someone asked me, like, what will you consider it as a success? And I said, if 100 people I don't know end up listening to it at some point in the future, I'll consider it a success. Because that's, to me, like, that's 100 people I don't know, and that would have been huge. I'd feel the same way about my writing. I'd feel the same way about any creative project I was doing. It's far surpassed that, and that to me is like mind-blowing. And that's really the benchmark I set for myself. And then on top of that, there's things where people say nice things about your show or agree to be on your show. And I think that anytime anybody does that, or you have that interaction, that helps. That helps me sort of get past some of the fear and anxiety I have. And it's such a welcoming and accepting and helpful community in general. I really think that helps combat it too. I think in writing circles that Alexander and I have been in the past, other artist circles we've been in, it's much more, I don't want to say cutthroat, but not as accepting and not as helpful. And I really love that about this. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we're going to continue to work in this genre, because it's, hopefully it stays this way. And then hopefully that'll continue to help deal with my own hangups when it comes to stuff like this. And I definitely want to just put it out there. If you're thinking about making something, just do it, because the benefits greatly outweigh any kind of anxiety you may feel, or worry you might have, or doubt you might have, or fear you might have. That's not to say that those things aren't going to go away, but you'll be so proud of yourself for doing anything. And don't think about it in terms of how many people are listening. I know I just talked about that to a certain extent. Just do it for yourself, because that's really, it's the best feeling in the world to have something out there for people to engage with. So that's my kind of plea for people. I just don't want to get the impression that we're kind of, not that I think that we are, but anybody listening in the future could be listening to this and being like, that sounds like a lot of fear. I'm not going to do it. Do it. It's definitely worth it.
And that's definitely worth addressing. This is a targeted panel specifically where we're talking about this element, but this isn't what we feel. This doesn't encompass all the other fun stuff, which will come up in future panels. I think we all obviously love this to some extent, because it is so much work. It is so much work. So us even being here shows that passion. I do like that idea of, think it for yourself. I think that's where the best shows come from, because then you're getting someone's personality and perspective, which is something we all, I think, like tapping into. Whoever else wants to jump in, what are some ways you found that are useful for getting around this?
There's a voice in my head. I'm going to describe this voice. This voice is a Scottish man after about 5 rounds of drink, who just sort of says, fuck it, just go for it. And that voice is my cheerleading squad at my darkest of moments. That is my recommendation. Get one of those. Get that voice. It's a good voice to have. But on a more serious note, on a slightly more serious note, and also a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I'm fairly sure we have all experienced content in some way, shape, or form that is terrible. That is from start to finish was a bad idea to begin with, was really poorly executed, and the actual thing that we got at the end was terrible. I'm thinking more specifically of movies and things, but I think it's applicable to this as well. Anything that we do, anything that we write, anything that we make is not going to be the worst thing on the planet. it just is not possible because we've already seen those other things, and there they are in the example of like creation history um, as being the worst things of all time. So knowing that we can't actually reach that level of like awful, that helps me a lot. Especially on the days where I like am looking at my own writing and I'm like, this is so full of typos. This is so full of typos. Why did I make this decision? Why are they doing this? Why? I don't understand. I don't know how I got here to this point. All of that. When I'm doing all of that with my own writing, I sort of sit back and think, I'm not the worst writer in the world. I know that I cannot be the worst writer in the world. I can't fail that badly to be the worst at something in the entire world, which is helpful and a just practical reminder, just a very practical reminder overall that even if that if I'm making something and that I love that thing, then it most likely is not going to be the worst thing in the world, and someone else is probably going to agree with me somewhere about the liking and enjoying the thing that I made. So, yeah, that like little reminder. Even if you have to isolate that part of this whole thing and like have that be repeated to you like daily for like a week and a half or so, make that a mantra. Actually, just make somehow sum up what I have just said and make that a mantra and continue and make something and put it out and just keep it going.
I think we have the first.
Yes.
I think we have the first Roundtable T-shirt design. Scottish cheerleader.
Go for it. Yes, indeed. Just go for it and make it happen. And I know as far as well, I don't know. Anyone who's like making something or considering making something and wants to like run it by someone who like has experience doing so, I know that I like am willing to offer to listen to anything. Maybe not necessarily read anything, but that's more because I'm dyslexic and that'll just take me forever. But like, I'll definitely listen to anything. So if anyone needs like a shout out or like a little retweet and a boost and like anything, let me know. I'll be happy to help in any way that I can.
JV's Twitter handle is in the description. I need to add the rest of your Twitter handles.
I have like 5, so
yeah,
it's fine. You can reach me at any of them. It's cool.
Rashika, how are you currently
All right.
dealing with this, and how is that going?
So I may not have a Scottish guy post 5 drinks telling me, fuck it, but I do have a very dear friend of mine. His name is The Boss, and he's very kind in that he lets me voice all my insecurities to him almost 24/7, and he's a very good supportive friend. And it's a two-way street, but especially recently, he's given me a lot of support in that area, and it's good, I think, to have someone reminding you that your stuff, that if you enjoy what you do, then it's worth doing. And I feel like that's the main takeaway for even if you're just trying to motivate yourself. If you're enjoying making a thing or enjoying the idea of wanting to do a thing, then go do it. Who's going to stop you? And then at least one person enjoys what you did because you did it.
Totally. Any other things from kind of what your my words, hello mania. Yeah, do you want to, or are you able to dig deeper? Like, did you always have your friends to vent this to? Was there ever a stage, or what was it like when you were in this stage where this was just a secret that you were holding, if that was even a thing, before you shared this with somebody?
That was a thing for sure. It was a little bit harder finding motivation then, or not necessarily motivation, but proof that I'm not an imposter. But I also think that at that point, I hadn't truly been as involved as I am with audio drama and the audio drama community as I am now, relatively. So there was also less pressure in that regard. I would say that it took a lot of, I guess, listening to other work and reminding yourself not necessarily what you want to become, not what you want to do exactly, but what you want to strive for, and just reminding yourself that this is art that you want to make. And that's what I did. Like, listen to shows I enjoy, interact with other people in the community, even before I knew I wanted to write a show. As a fan, I had a lot of interaction with other fans, and that was really motivational as well.
Thank you so much. Bridge, what are some of your techniques now that you've participated in 2 shows that have been smashing successes so far? No pressure.
Well, my techniques for combating it are, and I really wish I had a clear image of my, but my cheerleader in the back of my head is Julia just going, "Fuck you, do it," and then I do it. So not quite as exciting as a Scottish man, but Julia Shafini is always a plus.
Julia Shafini is definitely a motivational voice, if ever there was one.
I'm going to argue that is exactly that's exactly as good.
Can we get Julia to do a Scottish accent? Record that, right?
Okay, we're changing the shirt to Julia as a Scottish person. 5 drinks.
There you go.
Yes.
Because when I first started Tides, I tried to offer that Ayla and Jesse shouldn't pay me and Julia was like, "No, they're paying you," and I was like, "Okay," because I didn't have any experience when I was starting Tides, and so now anytime I'm like, I'm not good enough to do this, what am I even thinking? And I just hear Julia's voice in the back of my head going, "No, fuck you, do it," and then I go and I do it. Like how I just I walked up to the head of the local radio station a couple days ago. I was like, "Hey, are you hiring?" And he's like, "Yeah, we've got a producing position." And I was like, "Cool, can I apply?" And he was like, "Sure." And that was thanks to Julie's voice in the back of my head going, "Fuck you, do it."
I'm loving all of these voices in the back of people's heads, just yelling at them.
Also, yes, congratulations. Woo, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's super exciting.
Woo,
that's super exciting.
I think a good motto to live by is the L'Oreal tagline, "Because you're worth it."
Yes, I love that. I've just this whole time been going yes, absolutely, yeah, just when I've been muted, that's what I've been doing. I don't know if people have been looking at that tiny box on the screen, but it's been pretty much constant. Okay, solid.
Jeff, could I get closing words from you before let you go? Let you go.
My cheerleader is going to be JV going like this, I think, from now on, but in a Scottish accent, because I love that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I do have to run because I have to be with my daughter. But closing words. I think everybody's amazing in this panel. I think everybody's amazing in the audio drama community in general. And I think that 2 things. I think find your cheerleading voice, whoever that is, whether it's a Scotsman. I picture Scrooge McDuck now, kind of you can do it Laddie in voice, or JV snapping, or Julia Shafini in a Scottish accent. Whoever it is, find your voice, and don't, when you're hitting that wall where the imposter syndrome makes you feel like you shouldn't do it or you don't belong, have that voice drive you right through the wall. And don't be afraid to reach out, and don't be afraid to ask people for help, because the worst thing that can happen, and I know this is terrifying, it is for me, is that they say no. But I feel like in my experience with this community anyway, the ratio is going to be more in the yes column because everybody's super supportive and want you to succeed. So give it a shot. The worst that can happen is someone says no, you ask somebody else and they'll probably say yes, because you have good odds in the audio drama community, I think. I don't know. Those are terrible closing words, but that's all I got at the moment. I'm sorry. Okay, thanks. All right, goodbye, all. Thank you so much for including me. I think you're all the best, and have a lovely discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. So cool having you. How is everybody doing on time? We're an hour in.
I'm here till midnight at this job, so...
I'm good until at least 5. That's when the party's going to start, and it's probably going to get too loud for me to continue.
I probably have another hour left in me just because I have an exam on Monday.
Okay. I'm going to aim for 45 minutes, which means we're probably going to hit an hour. So I want to start revisiting, and this is where now I think we can everybody talk to everybody. Something that stood out when JV was talking, and this might be different, I think, in the context of an interview podcast from like an audio drama, because an audio is rejection. Because in audio drama, your initial rejections are if you're, I guess, approaching other people to work with, whether or not they want to work with you, actors. But then once you have them, hopefully they don't drop out. Whereas an interview podcast, it's all going through with that. And then there's the rejections once you get something out of, are people listening to this? Are people responding to me? You know, we could potentially get into some Twitter feelings because I noticed some of that. In the chat. What are like, because I see you all have all these techniques. I just hide. I keep my things secret. I keep my show, like Pacific last night, I was talking about my finale script and Pacific's like, do you want me any help looking out? Then I'm like, honestly, I would shut down if anybody looked at this script before I recorded it and put it out, which is a terrible way of going. I don't have my Julias and other people to do that. I just like use the pressure of, since I didn't show this to anyone, I have to make it good, because I am terrible with rejection. So how do you, how does that play out?
Any of you? Any of y'all?
Okay.
I know when I did my interview podcast, I was really lucky in that everyone I asked was like, yeah, I'd love to. I did have someone ask if I wanted to interview them, and I was like, I've never heard of your show before, and that's when I turned around and went to Will Williams. Shout out to Will. And I was like, hey, do you know this person? They asked if they asked to be interviewed, and Will was like, yeah, let's talk about this and let's see if you want to interview them. And really it was just having another person who I knew was more grounded in the community to like help me along with finding good people to interview, be it James, who put me in contact with most of them, or Will to tell me which people were like good and which people were like kind of sketchy was really nice.
Useful, for sure. Whew. I think I only had one outright actual like no to an interview request, and it's a porn star from San Francisco. So like for some reason here's my logic behind why I wasn't that upset was that he cited numbers as a specific reason that he said no, to which I was like, well, given that that's really not the point of why I was asking you on in the first place, then sure, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I find that I have an issue when like I said before, when they say yes, but then like when I try to schedule it, it doesn't happen, which then feels like, so they lied to me and they don't want to do this. That's great. I feel bad about this. That's really like I find that I've had a fair bit of that. Though I do find for most of those people there is a genuine like reason that they aren't able to do so. That there are like a bunch of them where I'm like, you totally are, but for some reason or another you don't want to. And honestly, it could be the same reason we are all here on this panel, where they are having that same feeling and said yes, but that are like, oh, absolutely not, I can't do this. No, I'm terrified. Despite the fact that I hear them on things every week, but you know,
it's
whatever.
The whole like, you didn't text me back, but I saw you update Instagram.
That is exactly it. Oh God.
I like to equate it to the John Mulaney bit about canceling plans. Canceling plans is like heroin. It's 100% easier to not do things than it is to do them.
Good old John.
I've never heard that bit. That makes me so happy.
I feel that in Los Angeles so much. Nobody leaves the house because outside is scary.
I feel that here too. If I can avoid leaving my house, like other than to go to work and then go home, like if those are the only things that I do most of the time, I don't really go places, which is very convenient when I have so much stuff to edit. Like it's real nice then, but otherwise, yeah. So, general fear.
Do you all have people look at drafts of things you're writing or working on before putting it out? I mean, I guess Bridge has to.
Yeah. Well, I have, specifically for Tides, definitely, it's Ayla, and for Arden, it's Christopher and Sarah. But I have written some original scripts that I don't know if they're ever going to be real things, but I definitely, the people that I like to run them by are usually Sean and Eli from Alba Salix, Axe and Crown, End of Time and Other Bothers. They're really great for if you just need a pick-me-up for like writing, because they've been working on season 2 of Alba for like 3 years.
Wow.
So they're ready, like the drop of a hat, to just read something and give you some feedback, tell you if it's good. And then that's, again, just like finding people who will be there for you is one of the best things you can do.
Totally. I completely agree. I think I only had one person read everything before I then immediately gave it to all of the actors. For season 2 anyway. All 40. Jesus. Anyway, that was...
I don't know what possessed you.
I don't either, but I'm so glad. I'm so glad that all of you agreed. Anyway, the only person that I sent the script to ahead of time was Jordan Cobb from Here Be Dragons, partially because she has 2 characters in the thing, and also she was one of the first people that I knew super enjoyed the show, because she invited me out to dinner in New York City after, and I think only up to episode 4 had come out at that. No. It was episode 6. Episode 6 had just come out, and I was in New York because it was my birthday, and she had listened to half of it, and like we got dinner, and she was halfway through the thing, and like during dinner she was like a little tense, but it was because she hadn't finished the rest of it and really wanted to, and had left on like a cliffhanger moment. Super great. But yeah, that was a lovely thing. But because I knew how excited she was, and also because Here Be Dragons is wonderful and I love her show as well, I just sent the script to her and was like, hey, read through this. Tell me what you think. This might make you angry. because I knew there were parts that would make her angry, and I also just wanted that positive feedback and reaction there. But she also had some really great suggestions for things to possibly change, or maybe things that I should flesh out and explain more. And it was just super great to know that I had someone who was completely down and was still going to do it no matter what. And just shout out to Jordan for being amazing, because also our text message thread. Also, Chad, our text messages also look very similar to the ones that I sent to Jordan, which is there's quite a bit of me like complaining about things and then also being very insecure about things. Like usually in the same message, they just sort of happen at the same time. So I just have a couple people here and there that are like amazing for that, and who are awesome when it comes to needing to have them review a draft of something.
Yeah. Rashika, you said you have your friend, of course.
Yep.
As far as reading your scripts goes,
So
do you give those to people or do you hide them?
my biggest problem is I always want to show too many people before it is done. Like I think I have the opposite problem, because I guess I want people to know that I did a thing, even if it's not completely done yet. And also I constantly crave validation. But so my biggest difficulty is not showing people. So for example, with the spec script that I'm writing, I can't show anybody because it involves spoilers from episodes that haven't been released. So I can't. And that has been super, super hard for me. One of the hardest things I've done. It's only been a week so far. But I'm on the edge of like my hooks. Like I can't go any farther. So I always want to show everyone. The one person that I will not show until something is done is my mother. So like I will show all 5 of my roommates. I will make them read every page. But if something is done, that is when my mother gets to read it or hear it in this case. And so I guess that's kind of the end of the line for me. As far as sending things to other already established podcasters, when I was writing something for the Austin Film Festival Fiction Podcast Competition this year, Eli Barraza very kindly offered to look at one of my scripts and give me look at the script and give me feedback. And I think in that 1 or 2 page document, I received the best advice of my entire life. And from what I got in return on that, I still learn from what she gave me and put it towards what I'm writing even now. So shout out to Eli Barraza. That was extremely kind of you. And like,
it was on our last panel, if you want to hear Eli's words.
Yeah.
Was that advice specific, or was it like a general put on your wall advice that you could share with us?
It was both. I know that she gave me some stuff on writing for your sound designer, which I think she made into a Twitter thread that I retweeted. I can see if I can find the link if you want to put it in the description. But I definitely retweeted it. But it was talking about writing for sound design and specificity of sound and what you want to see when working with someone else who's designing your sound. So I guess, which is something really, because I haven't been writing for audio as such for that long of a time in the short span of my life. So that was extremely helpful in shifting how I think about what I'm writing and the medium I'm writing for.
Yeah, that's, I think a big source of imposter syndrome for me that I'm currently going through is bringing other people into my process, because then there's that opportunity for misunderstanding and rejection. And I've had one person would go through the scripts, my producer Gretchen, and it was School of Hard Knocks. They would all get marked up in red, and there'd be like a sentence scribbled, like circled, being like, I like that, keep that. Then I would go back to work. But yeah, so because you're working with actors, you're all working with other people, which is something I haven't really done. Beyond, I had actors in my first episode, but I dragged people I knew into a closet and be like, read this. Okay, you're good. Thank you. I will buy you food. Speaking of buying food, this is going to be a bit of a part when it comes to getting paid. Do you see yourself as a professional creator of things? How do you deal with the money, and what do you, and this is also, because I want to make sure I'm presenting this all in a way that Rashika can also participate in. And also I want to hear this. If not, what is that line? To you, what is the point for you where you would be like, I'm a professional. I go and tell people I'm a podcaster. I could go to a party with other podcasters and stand here with confidence. If any, because let's be real, everybody there is like, I love fraud.
that specific under voice, just oh god.
Because I've frequently rejected offers to be paid for things that I've done for people. Granted, for me, I'm all about art trade, so I'm like, no, pay me, but pay me with like an art trade, like do something. Like I might need you in the future. I like trading in favors. It's the way of the Fae.
Rock and roll. So we'll just count those bow ties as as two of the roles that I had you play this season.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I can't reach them. I would grab them.
They're precious. I don't have any money for anything ever. And sort of because of that, I knew going in like, this is going to be a thing where I ask a bunch of people who probably do this and get paid by other people to volunteer to do this because maybe they'll enjoy it, possibly. I want to pay them. There is absolutely no way that I can make that happen. I know that there are lots of people who have various processes and things that they put in place to be able to do so, like, for example, crowdfunding, which on its surface sounds like a great idea. I've had terrible experiences with crowdfunding, just in general, so I tend to steer away from that overall. But that also was veering away from actually answering the question, which is the line at knowing that I could go somewhere with confidence and talk about a thing was after the amount of time I spent editing one episode and that episode going up, and knowing that I put, okay, so it was like what, 20, I think it was like 25 hours that I spent editing the first episode alone. At that point, I'm going to just call myself a professional because I spent 25 hours making that happen. And then, on average, 24 hours for every other episode of the show. So, 240 in general hours spent making the thing. I'm going to just count that as, yeah, I think I've spent enough time. I think I've done it. I'm gonna call that good. Even if I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. So I also, similar to you, Bridge, I have minimal sound design experience other than what is there. And prior to making Red Wing, had not actually edited anything sound-wise at all. And there we are. There it is.
Yeah, does anyone here have actual sound design experience before making an audio drama? Because
nope.
The first episode is the first thing I made. Like, as far as just like, Google searches for days.
I had one thing that I'd done before, and the sound design of that consisted of me dragging a backpack across the floor to sound like I was dragging a body. And that was the entire sound design for like a 2-minute thing.
And it probably sounded great to people. I'm thinking of, there's this Ghostbusters actual play, Ghostbusters Resurrection or something. And I was so impressed because they'd have little tiny sound effects and some music. And I was like, this is real. This is really happening. I think for most audiences, if you drag a backpack across the floor, they're for it.
Oh yeah. Oh, 1000%. I admire people who can actually record their own sounds. I just finished editing the second episode of the second season, there is a song that appears in there that was generated from me walking through this building that I work in right here, which is very echoey in every room other than this one, because this obviously is this is built to not echo. But I was in like a hallway where there's an intense echo, and I just made these weird sounds and just recorded them. And that is an actual song that's going to play in the thing. That, I think, is the thing I'm the proudest of that I've ever done, ever. It's real creepy sounding, and I like it. Anyway, that's...
Yeah. Rashika, what is your, because you're at the point where it's all, what are your kind of lines of, okay, what are your current like goals for success, I guess, or to the point where you'd be like, I am a podcaster? Unless you're, I mean, you could be right now, be like, I'm a podcaster. I have scripts. People have read them. All of my roommates have read them. My mom has even read them, which means they're good.
My mom has not read them yet.
Oh, okay.
No, she's not.
Yeah, she'll get in there. Well, what are your current kind of things going into that?
So I guess the first, besides making an episode and having an episode being done, which I think at one point that would have been, it still is a goal, but I think at one point maybe I would have been comfortable calling myself a podcaster then. Who knows, maybe I will be when an episode exists. But as of now, I think my brain likes things with a beginning and an ending. So like a season or like a half season arc. My brain likes plots and arcs. So if I can put out something that begins some threads and ties up at least one of them, I think my brain would be proud to call myself a podcaster.
Yeah, I relate to that. I'm desperate to get this last episode out because then I'll be like, I've put my first creative project into the world in a complete form. When it comes to, because going into now the money part of the question, because Bridge, you've been forced to take money from people.
I'm still amazed that people...
Why didn't you want to take money from people? I mean,
because I didn't like, you get paid for like something that you've been trained to do, and at that point I had like maybe 2 years of just doing random stuff in Audacity and one like 3-minute comic dub. So I didn't really think that there was any reason to pay me, because I was just going to be like, let's just throw some sounds in. It'll be decent. And so I didn't want to get paid because I didn't think that I was qualified enough. And then when I got the offer to edit on Arden, Christopher started out by telling me, this is how much we're going to pay you per episode. And I was like, you want to pay me? But why? And so I don't know.
I'm there. I'm at the point now usually where I'm like, I'm paying my bills. So if I usually refuse pay, it's because I also want them to just have the money to make the thing good. Though I do think it's probably, you know, being a little further in, legitimizing experience to be able to pay people in your production. I do have a hot take on that. I have a hot take. Because I've been hearing some people who are higher up and more established being like, if you don't pay your actors, you're a bad person. Which I...
Yeah. So...
And where I usually hear that, and you know, and I've duked it out with some high figures. And what's great about the audio drama community is it doesn't matter how high they are, they'll usually have discussions with you. Like I've had many a chat with Casey Wayland of We're Alive, which they have 80 million downloads, where I was on an opposing side of view and he was very polite and cool about it. But with the whole, I feel, because the next panel is going to be on accessibility, which I'm really excited about. They're planning right now. Paying, I think working for your creators or for the people you're being creative with, and like us acknowledging each other's work is really important. But at the same time, I do think there's a privilege that comes to having the money to pay. It assumes that you're getting your bills paid. It assumes that you have the social and know-how in order to crowdfund, that you have the social status with other people to have them want to participate in your crowdfund.
Right there.
And also, I do know some like major professional voice actors who will do free voice acting for friends, so long as their whole thing is, it's like, if nobody's getting paid, this is fine. But if somebody's getting paid, everybody should be getting a piece of the payment. There might be some people out there who very much disagree and are like, no, you need to save money before you're able to make an audio drama. But I would rather have people's personal opinion. I'm owning my experience and my opinion. I would rather have people make an audio drama and have that thing exist than not exist because the person couldn't come up with however much money to do things. But I'm also big on art trade, where I'm like, I'll voice act for you, you do some voice acting for me, or you do this. My composer, I help him with social media and getting his stuff out there. Like, in a place where artists a lot of us are poor, very poor people living at the bottom of society. I think helping each other out and lifting each other up is really important. But that's my hot take as a moderator.
I completely, entirely agree. I will say the only person I do pay is the composer of these songs. Shout out to Nico. You do a great job. And that has more to do with the fact that is, well, one, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if the rate I'm being charged for this is actually the same for most people, but that also could be due to quantity. I've requested a lot of music from him. Anyway, it's like, he's the only one that I pay, and I pay for that out of like my paychecks from this job, which may lead to other things not getting paid, but that's me putting something personal into a project because I really want the project to have that thing. If I would rather, like you said, I would much rather have people make a show and have that show be a thing that exists, or really any creative endeavor. I would rather have them just do that creative thing than to not do it because the funding isn't there, not do it because they can't find an actor who's willing and able, because there is also an ability bit there if you are actually able to offer your time for free, because I can see where that's like not an option as well, but like where they can find someone who can act and fairly well and can actually deliver on the project. Like all of those things, knowing that there is someone there who can actually, like, I would rather have someone be able to find all those, be able to find access to all those people and all of that, and actually make the thing, than to have them not do it or feel discouraged because they can't find the resources to do so. Yeah, like the entire, short of like paying for the music and hosting and whatnot, the first season I'm pretty sure cost me like almost nothing, with the exception of also a microphone too, so I guess equipment a little bit, but like cost me actually nothing really to put out. It was just a lot of creative working around things when I sort of ran into I really want that sound effect on that paid website. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build that sound effect, like just, or somehow like doing something like that. I also wanted to add, while I didn't have editing experience, I did get really great advice from, oh damn it, I'm spacing on how specifically to pronounce his last name. but his name is Phil, and he was involved in Conjuria and the No Sleep podcast. Phil is an amazing sound designer, and he has helped me out immensely in, like, basically, I think the first thing I asked him was, how does one handle narration and then people inside of a scene? Like, what are just some basic ways to distinguish between the two? He gave me that advice, and then from that, I just sort of ran with it. And that was, like, the most helpful thing that I'd ever heard. So that was an example, I suppose, of reaching out and asking for assistance from someone, even if it was just, like, advice on how to do something as opposed to asking for them specifically to do the thing. But that's I would much rather have someone create something than not. There's always a way around doing that, I think.
So don't get imposter syndrome around money. It's just, if you make $10,000 and other people are involved, don't keep all the $10,000. Pay your people.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're making money, pay people.
Yes.
But if you're not making any money, art trade.
And this is just a little bit of tiny hot take on the editing side. If you're paying your actors, consider also paying your editors, especially if you ask them to do more than just sound design, which is what they were brought on to do in the first place. But then you're like, oh, could you edit together the raw dialogue too? Oh, could you
so much work.
do the entire production? And I was like, okay, I can do that. And then I was getting too much. And then I had Julia in the back of my head, fuck you. They should be paying you. Quit. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, it takes my longest time in the booth for 1994 on like Rocky's heaviest episode was 30 minutes. It takes me 4 hours to edit one actor's takes down. 4 hours. And then putting them all together. You should it's so much like it's all talent and it's all valuable.
Yeah.
Editing is so much work. Like someone's looking at bringing me on as a sound designer, and they're like, "Well, looking at a fair rate." I'm like, it would be unfair for you to pay me a fair rate because it would be thousands of dollars if we're going for like the hour thing. But if you want to pay some money, yeah, have at it.
Because the thing with this is I was like happy to just like, they brought me on to like just touch up some sound design. I was like, cool, I can do that for free. That's just, I'll just move some sound effects around. It'll be fine. And then they were like, oh, but can you do this? And can you do that? And I was like, well, they might not be paying the actors either. And Julia was like, no, I know they're paying the actors. Ask if you're going to get paid. And I was like, oh, well, that changes things.
Rashika, I have a question in the comment. Do you have a name for your thing yet, or is it not quite there?
I'm going to give a non-answer, which is that I'm on my 3rd working title.
Okay.
And as such, will not share just because it will probably change again.
All right. Do you have a description of your thing yet to get people excited, or do you also not? I totally get if you don't want to put that out there yet.
I can probably write one down and tweet it later.
Okay, sounds good. Rashika's Twitter handle is in the comments, so because I think everybody's really excited to see what you're working on.
Yes. Oh my god, I'm so hype. Yay.
Yeah, and bringing things back to imposter syndrome too. I think so much is appearance based. We talked about this on the last panel, but just like being on a panel for someone who's just out in the world, it's like, oh, that person's on a panel. But when I went to PodCon, that's the first time I saw Julia Shafini, Amanda McLaughlin, Michelle Nicolaus, and all of those people I saw on panels, and was just like, clearly they are the most experienced, legendary podcasters on the planet, and they are legendary people. I adore all of them, but we're all just people. We're all just like. And that's with Twitter too. If you see people interacting, that just kind of happened. You can do that too. People are so excited about audio drama, especially people who commute a lot and just listen to an absurd amount of shows because they'll listen to your show.
Yes.
Speaking of PodCon, just out of curiosity, are you guys going?
Yes.
Yes, I will walk there if I have to.
I can't. I absolutely can't afford to. Plus, the time that it's at, I literally have to be here in this building.
I'm sending you my remote attendance link.
Oh, ooh, yes. Yes, I will remote attend this thing. That sounds actually like a thing that I will definitely do.
That's what I did last year. I experienced it vicariously through remote attendance and the few Instagram live things that Sean and Eli did.
God, yes. Okay.
If you're able to, I think we'll just talk about PodCon at every panel. All of these panels are doing. If you're able to go, if not, hit some people up and maybe they can get you their remote attendance if you're not financially able. But if you're able to go, even if you don't have a show, Station Blue was not a thing when I went last December. Ayla and Jesse, who are the creators of Tides was not out yet. We were there promising people that we had a show, but we were, Rashika used the term nobodies. I went there going, I am nothing. These people have shows. And it's hilarious when it goes to perception because we've mentioned James Oliva several times of what's the frequency. I thought James was the biggest hot shot ever because he had 3 or 4 episodes. But last time I talked to James, he's like, I'm looking forward to going to PodCon with a completed season. I feel like we all have our line where it's like, no, you had a podcast. You knew these. I didn't know anybody. Podcasters are really friendly. So I was hoping to meet 2 or 3 people that I'd have contact with. I met, I think, all of them. Like not all of them. I met most of the audio drama people. But it's one of the best things you can do for your show, even if it doesn't exist yet. Go, because then you'll have people with experience that you can talk to. Lots of great panels, and the remote attendance. The panels are fantastic.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Like I still refer back to my remote attendance from last year.
From last year, yeah, definitely.
Yes. Okay.
I'm trying to think if there's anybody we haven't addressed out there who might watch this in the future when it comes to their experience with how they experience imposter syndrome. And what might be helpful for them.
I was thinking about sharing the story of my first experience with imposter syndrome, which it wasn't for podcasting. It was actually imposter syndrome about just being somebody's friend. So I have a friend. His name's Shane Gill. If you watch YouTube, he's the guy behind the channel Did You Know Gaming. I guess he was also just like before YouTube, he also did he has a site, and I met him 4 years ago through a lot of really weird circumstances, and he is the nicest guy ever in existence. I also watched him drink 2 liters of vodka, which was impressive and scary.
Wow.
Score! That's insane. I do not know how that's possible, but okay.
I would have imposter syndrome too.
But he went to a convention that I go to with his other YouTube buddies, and I was just walking around trying to catch Shane at like moments when he wasn't busy or hanging out with friends. And I overheard these 2 guys who had like passed by me, and they were making comments about me and that I was dressed up as a character from a thing that they had been a part of, and how that made me a fake fan because I was just wearing the same thing as everyone else. And I was like, what? And then I suddenly got really self-conscious and was like, am I really Shane's friend, or did I just force my way into his life in like a fit of trying to get to know a famous person? And then I just wanted to like shove my head into my shirt and die. And I didn't talk to him again for like a year until I got drunk one night and was like, I'm sorry, I just ghosted you, but I felt really self-conscious. And then he messaged me back and he was like, yo, fuck them. And I was like, cool.
Yeah.
That is exactly...
I'm going to like a freaking Halloween party in like 5 hours with a bunch of video game developers, and I want to fight all of them now on your behalf, even though they weren't involved in that.
Agreed, even though I'm not going to that thing. Because that is... I also just... there's a moment also, too, where things go past, like, being a thing that's going to make me self-conscious, a thing that's just going to make me angry, and, like, that's that point for me. Like, I don't like when people are rude. It bothers me. I don't get angry frequently. I don't know, but when I do, it gets dark. So I don't. That makes me upset that people got like that. That people behaved in that manner. That makes me angry.
Yeah.
I'm going to sip this water.
That's gatekeeping, which is something we talked about in the last panel. Gatekeeping in the podcasting community and why it's the worst and why we disagree with it, and why, you know, Jeff mentioned earlier he hopes that this is one of the best creative communities, and hope it stays that way. And I think we're all working at keeping it that way. Something that I found useful here in combating imposter syndrome is just knowing, because this is something that like psychologists will do for a person, is have them talk about the imposter syndrome, because talking to other people helps. Because if you're like, I am a fraud, and you talk to 20 other people you really admire and they're like, we're frauds, you're like, oh, maybe
like, maybe if we're all frauds, then none of us are frauds.
Yeah. Or just like,
there is no.
If everyone's super, no one is.
Yeah. Or if they're all fooling people, maybe I can also fool someone. But I have met people at every stage of kind of production thing, because it's the whole don't trust artists because they mix with all classes. And so with me mixing with all classes and all people, you know, from movie directors down to people on my level, I've seen them all experience imposter syndrome and talk about it. And these are people where I would be like, I really like the thing you did. It's pretty great. If I would list you among professional this thing if I could. So it's something that not everybody. There's people who don't, and you don't feel imposter syndrome about not having imposter syndrome too. You're allowed to just not have it. But it's something that all, you know, it happens on every level of thing. One thing I wanted to speak to, just because I'm thinking of people I've interacted with. Do you think would you recommend, because most of you have kind of people you talk to and people within the community, is that something you'd recommend for most people, or there's some types of people? Because I've seen some people end up building a lot of pressure before they've released a project and then disappearing as a result. And I think I was somebody who could have done that. I didn't really know anybody in the audio drama community until I was making a thing. But what would you say to that? Because that's something that I'm kind of concerned about when it comes to encouraging people, is like making sure I feel, even though I shouldn't, I feel a little responsible if they just vanish because the pressure becomes too much. Because there is that factor, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, it gives you the same reward as actually doing it, makes it less likely that you're going to do it.
I think it's nice to have someone you can talk to, but not necessarily someone in the community. So for me, a boss, he listens to a couple of podcasts, but he's not super involved in the audio drama community. Like, he's not on Twitter interacting with everybody. So it's nice that I can talk to him about problems and he will understand what I'm talking about, or like the situation. But there isn't a pressure of, I'm going to let him down, or I've finished it just by telling him. And so I don't actually show a boss my scripts until they're done. I guess a boss is like my number 2 after my mom. So there's like a hierarchy here. But it's nice to have someone to talk to, just because bottling things up inside just becomes I don't want to say lonely because not everyone gets lonely like that, but it's a lot for one person to process. So it's good to have somewhere to get it out. If that somewhere for someone is like a journal or a notebook, then that's, I think, also a valid solution. It doesn't have to be another person, but I think having somewhere to put your thoughts down and work them out is good.
Yeah. I know, not to be an old hat and use another John Mulaney bit, but part of my family is Irish, so we all prescribe to the I'll bottle all of my emotions up right here and then I'll die, which is something that you can't really do in this community because there will always be people who are there and like, hey, are you okay? I haven't heard from you in a little bit. How you doing? And the pressure to create is like, I've had a couple scripts that I've made and it was like, I really want to do something with this, and I'll like show it around and then I'll be like, wait, I've shown this to people now I have to do it, oh god, but I don't want to do it until I'm absolutely sure it can be perfect, and then that just kind of gets bottled up right here, and then one day I'll die.
I never have experienced that before things have started. Before I've already started doing something. It's only ever after I've started doing something and people start to seem a little bit excited about something, and then I decide, you know what? This thing that I'm doing, it doesn't make sense. I'm going to throw this away. With my true crime show, it was a little bit like that. Granted, there was also a mental health piece of like just true crime is difficult to cover and be healthy while doing so, especially when you're doing it alone. So with that, I got really excited about my second season for that show. I got 3 episodes out of that second season before the show itself was canceled, so that one is now gone too. Of my 3 shows, Red Wing is the only one that has not, in fact, gotten the cancellation, because it won't until it is finished, because I've decided so. But that one, I got very excited about it, and then reached a point. Honestly, I think I just got real depressed one day, and then suddenly decided, yeah, this show's gonna have to go, because I don't know that it's causing me this feeling, but I know that if I get rid of this, it'll be one less thing just on this plate of things that I have yet to do. So perhaps I will feel better if this thing is gone. So in those cases, I would suggest, maybe hold it, not necessarily holding it specifically only to yourself, but like when it does become too much, I would actually suggest reaching out to someone who is in the community, because they will have most likely some word of wisdom for you that might be just that little spark that you need to get through that moment. They also might not. So I suppose gauge the source that you are, like gauge the person who you choose to ask for that.
Take it to Podcast Problems Discord.
Yes.
There is the thing. Do that. Bring it there. And someone will say something nice, and they will make you feel better. But other than that, I can see it being, well, there's another thing I wanted to mention though. Being okay with failure is a thing that I think is a thing that, well, I know it's a thing I've been working on getting better at. Like getting better at the concept of mistakes and failing at things. And I mean, not complete and total failure, but like situational failure, and just like, oh, this thing didn't go the exact way that I planned. This thing isn't currently going the way that I planned. Maybe it will in the future. Or sort of in positive psychology, it is sort of the difference between the difference is between having a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. My degree was in psychology, by the way. Anyway, so between a fixed mindset, which is I'm a failure and that's never going to change, to a growth mindset, which is I failed. Let me try that again and see what happens this next time. Being willing to try something again and learn from the thing that you tried previously until you, which is also just called resiliency. So working on that resilience and being okay with when something didn't go necessarily the exact right way, and learning why it didn't go the way you wanted it to, and then trying again and making sure that you can try again, always leaving the option to try again. I think that's important. So I also don't necessarily see a issue. I mentioned that to say I don't necessarily see an issue with someone doing a thing, getting really excited about that thing, telling a lot of people about it, and then realizing that that was a mistake and having that moment of like, oh, I failed at that because I went too far in that direction. So my response to that person is, that's fine. That is okay. Give it another shot. Maybe not. It may not be the same project. It may be that you now have too much attached to that one project emotionally and you have to go on to a new one. That's totally fine. As long as you keep moving in a direction, whatever direction that is, as long as you keep moving in that direction, and you'll be fine. Even if that means you have to circle back on occasion.
Love it. So learn from the thing. Have someone who's not in the community you can talk to, who's going to view things. Reach out to the community if you're looking for some encouragement, because probably anything you're going through is something most of us have gone through. You'll be able to find other people. I've had that a lot, where I'll have somebody who's trying to communicate what they're going, and I was like, no, I'm on the same page with you. Like, I get exactly what you're saying. It's fine. Keep going. Just keep going. I want to get final thoughts from people before we wrap up. We're almost at the 2-hour mark, and then we'll promote all your things and say au revoir for now.
Just really quick to jump off what JB was saying. It's like, don't be afraid of failure. And also, though, it's okay to take a step back and take a break. I know with quite a few shows actually that I've been listening to, there'll be times when the creators will say, I'm going to step back for a bit, just to reassess like where I'm at right now, both maybe for mental health reasons, both maybe just for where the show is going, and then come back and keep going at it. And a lot of those shows are shows that I love. And if you're worried about like losing an audience, I can promise you that the audience will wait for you. But yeah, and if you don't have an audience yet, then you have nothing to lose. Yeah,
and communicate. I've only seen people get irritated as far as audience, and this is like on the outer edges of the internet where people will be meaner, when that's not communicated. If a show stops updating and nobody knows why, you can do it. Like I had a full-on breakdown over in that corner and did a tweet storm while I was trashing an entire episode I had just made and being like, I have to remake this because I'm in a new mental space. Everyone was super cool about it. So yeah, that is important. Most shows take breaks.
Oh yeah.
Life happens, and a lot of us are not, most of us are neurodivergent. I think that's the current term. A lot of people, taking care of yourself is super important, and I think makes the work better. But final thoughts on imposter syndrome and all of that before we wrap up. Sorry, I'm waving my moderator stick around.
For sure.
My thoughts as being a person on this panel, and my takeaway is I'm thankful for the voice in my head, for the Julia Shafini cheerleader in my head that says, fuck you, do it. Because otherwise I'd never do anything.
Agreed. Same, actually. That's gonna be it. regardless of what form that takes, develop that tiny cheerleader in your head. Even though like that may sound like having a voice in your head is a problem, if it is a tiny cheerleader, it's never a problem. Or maybe not a tiny cheerleader, maybe just a drunk Scotsman. And either way, that is fine. Like whatever it needs to be, whatever that voice is that says, "Oh yeah, yes, absolutely, yes," whatever that voice is, encourage that little voice to continue by feeding it sugar. And it will just keep doing that. Okay, that metaphor went off the rails.
Love
Someone
it.
else pick it up.
I would say just even being on this panel, there is some imposter syndrome to get over that I did get over with all of your lovely help, which I think really drives home the point that squash that imposter syndrome or have your little voice do it for you, but push through, because it might not go away completely, but it will fade into the background in the moments that matter. So push through it. And I'm using this advice for myself as well. So
yeah, same.
One of the valuable lessons I've learned from being bipolar is everything comes and everything goes and everything comes again, including imposter syndrome. I spend 3 days before each release in utter terror, like an actual fear response for days before releasing. That's gotten a little bit better as I've released things, because I'm like, people haven't hated it, but it is something that the clock keeps ticking, right? The hours keep going by. Eventually you're going to be the person who's not dealing with that anymore, and the thing is going to be out. So yeah, push through, learn to love it, learn to embrace it, and maybe not love it, because anxiety is a pain, but like that, it's all part of the process for a lot of us. Where can people find all of you wonderful panelists? I have your Twitter handles in the description, but what are you working on? What, if you want to promote anything, now's your time.
You can find me at Audio Gremlin on Twitter. I also run the Tides Instagram, where you will occasionally hear me playing stupid clips of our actors or posting photos of my cat.
Excellent.
The Tides Instagram, by the way, is just Tides Podcast.
Rock and roll. So, as I mentioned before, In the Mix and Criminal Musics have low-key died. But what has replaced In the Mix for me is Chats with JV, which honestly is just a better title. Like, just better marketing. So if you would like to listen to that, that's at Chats with JV on Twitter. You can also find me at Mixterhyde. That's MYXTERHYDE on Twitter, and at Red Wing Pod on Twitter. I will always be at those three. Always reachable at those three. And season 2 of Red Wing is gonna start. It's gonna start January 1st, as we did last year, as we will continue to do for all the years to come. By which I mean this one and the next one, because 3 seasons and finished.
And a movie.
But yeah. That's adorable. No, I refuse.
Yeah. Thank you. Rashika?
I spend 99% of my social media is Twitter at Asteroud, like asteroid, but the Roy part is Rao, which is my last name. And then, yeah, if I end up getting or doing any special projects, you will know on there, and from there, we will branch.
And once your audio drama pops up, we'll all be shouting about it a lot, because I'm excited.
Sorry, what?
And once your audio drama shows up, we'll all be shouting about it a lot, because I'm excited.
Yeah.
You can find me at Station Blue Pod on Twitter. Station Blue is the show I work on. The first season's almost done, and then I'll be jumping to the second. I have some other projects coming up next year, but that'll come when it comes. JV.
One other thing. Wanted to shout out 1994 since we're both on it.
Yeah, 1994. Made by Throw Smiley. It's really, really funny.
God, yes, it's incredible.
You have no idea where it's going. It gets bonkers. I think they're on their second episode. And then also, Arden. Shout out to Arden for getting in that top 20. So rad.
Yes.
I just love all these shows doing so well. The Audioverse Awards are happening. All of those shows are in there in some way, shape, or form. There is a lot to vote for, but please, if you have 5 minutes, go vote. Helps people with visibility and everything. I'm going to, if you go to Will Williams, which is at Will Williams, what's Will's Twitter handle? Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Will Wrights? Is it Will Wrights?
Will Wrights?
Will Wrights.
Okay, at Will Wrights. Look for the Discord link. Discord is a free thing that you can download to a computer, to a phone, if you have access to those things.
And you can even just do it through your favorite browser. You don't have to download it.
Yeah, and there's a really great community there that is fans and creators, and it's all sorts of folks. I would say that's a good spot. Oh, somebody... Lucy, hi Lucy, says at Will_Wrights.
Yeah,
that's WILW_Wrights.
Thanks, Lucy.
Queen.
Beyond that, the next panel is going to be on accessibility, which is something I'm really excited about because I think that's something we're all thinking about as creators right now. I imagine that'll we'll talk about things like transcripts and. I'm not sure who is on the panel yet because they're putting it together. Where hopefully the next panels will happen quicker than this one has. This was us trying to get a Dungeons and Dragons group together from all around the country of people in different time zones with different requirements, which is why it took so long.
I just got real confused because I thought we were actually going to play D&D after this, but I guess we're not. And now it's the first time I'm hearing about it.
The laptop is propped on a bunch of D&D books. But in the future, I think the plan is to set a date for a panel and then see who is available to work within that panel. I'm sure Lisette will talk about that a little more, as will Julia Shafini as the founders of this whole thing. But yeah, so look forward to the accessibility panel. If you have any further questions, shoot us tweets. If you have comments, if you have things we didn't cover, we'll post them. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in this. And thank you to Jeff. And thank you to everybody in the comments. I'm seeing in between. There's my friend at the Athurin podcast, Christopher Dole of Arden. I'm seeing Lucy, who's so wonderful. Yeah, thanks everybody who stopped in and watched. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to stop broadcasting.
Yes, bye y'all.
Bye.